A while ago, I asked you, let's say mankind exists in a galaxy-spanning sci-fi setting, but they aren't recognizable as we know them, a veritable cosmic horror of sorts. What route would be the scariest direction for them to take? And in quite the majority, genetic engineering into something monstrous won out. I posted a series of teasers that take the form of the types of audio logs you'd find in something like a survival horror game. I had a lot of fun working on those, and I got some talented voice actors on them, so even though they were kind of slaughtered by the algorithm, I'm still very happy with them, and I hope that you give those a look when you're done here. Anyways, this is a project I've been wanting to do for quite some time. It was one thing to talk on this channel about horror projects that already exist, but eventually, I felt a need to create something new. I'll admit up front, a big part of the inspiration behind this particular type of creative expression is the Templin Institute's Stellaris Invicta series, which really fascinated me, utilizing a grand strategy game to tell an overarching narrative. I love when games can tell experience-based stories that evolve as you play, so with this tool at my disposal, I wanted to try and utilize it in a similar way, just with a more horror-focused angle. My goal was to create a future for mankind that turned them into something horrific. So, without further ado, here's the lore primer. In August of 2061, the Federal Earth Commonwealth, or FEC, launched the OSS Wotan above Earth orbit, a massive space station with facilities designed for scientific research and orbital military training operations. Operated by nations from around the globe, the station has skyrocketed advancements of both military hardware and biological technologies. On June 1st, 2081, the FEC officially engaged in a widespread conflict with the renegade faction calling themselves the Continuum. People who have integrated with cybernetics, bridging the human mind with distinctly thinking machinery. On January 9th, 2084, the first of many nuclear detonations was unleashed, despite several decades of the FEC's attempts to increase nuclear disarmament efforts. After this threshold had been crossed, a domino effect had led to several more warheads being detonated, eventually rendering the Earth barren, a nuclear winter sweeping the planet, rendering most life dead or left to adapt to the extreme conditions. In an effort to reclaim their lost home, those who were unaffected by the radiation in orbital stations had begun devising plans to return to the surface and continue the fight against the Continuum. With much deliberation, at the end of 2090, the final stages of approval had been done for Project Desmodus, a massively controversial proposal by Dr. Samantha Langstrom, a renowned genetic engineer. As most equipment was unable to keep any expeditionary forces safe from the radioactive atmosphere or the weaponry of the Continuum for prolonged periods, she had strived to augment humanity for long-term exposure on Earth's surface. While incorporating typical resistances to radiation from extremophile life forms, she had also incorporated vast amounts of vampire bat DNA into what would be finalized as Serum D, with the intention of giving the augmented humans echolocation to navigate in the pitch-black atmosphere, a modified digestive system to allow for feeding on the blood of any animals they come across during lengthy operations, and enhanced physical senses. All of the first trials of Serum D would be performed on military personnel, in an effort to focus on destroying the last traces of the Continuum, before expanding to science personnel who can conduct field tests to hopefully reverse the damage that had been done to the planet. The initial trials were a sweeping success. The first batch of these augmented soldiers were sent down on a year-long offensive against one of the central Continuum operating bases, culminating in the Battle of Los Angeles, California on May 6, 2096, which would go down in history as a massive step in reclaiming the planet. After the Battle of Los Angeles, nearly all of the military personnel aboard the OSS Wotan and other orbital stations were given Serum D and sent on similar strikes against Continuum forces. The project was only meant to last until the Continuum was gone and the surface was clear of radioactivity, with a secondary serum to reverse the augmentation process to be mass-produced and given to all of the augmented humans. However, on February 11, 2101, Dr. Langstrom had discovered that Sarah Hansen, a veteran of the Battle of Los Angeles, was pregnant. This was a biological impossibility, as Dr. Langstrom had coded the process to result in impotent reproductive function once augmented. The firstborn, Adam Hansen, was given an almost mythical level of reverence by other augmented individuals. Eventually, more births followed suit, and Dr. Langstrom had begun to come to terms with this new paradigm shift. Humanity, even with all of her careful planning in place, could not go back now. A new species was being born, and she was their creator, or, to some, their god. Over time, with augmented scientists refining the process, a new version of Serum D, enhanced by genetic coding taken from those who were able to produce offspring, was mass-produced and spread amongst all remaining humans on board the orbital stations. Except, of course, for Dr. Langstrom. After all, such a brilliant mind had to be preserved, untouched, and she was placed into a cryostasis by her own request. After humanity had been fully augmented, operations against the Continuum swelled tremendously, ending with their defeat in 2118. The wait to return to Earth was over. The children of Homo sapiens desmodus would no longer take their first steps inside the cold halls of a space station, but on the soil of their homeworld. Humanity had returned from the brink, forever changed, but joined with a new purpose. The rebuilding of their civilization had begun, and a new era was upon them. Shedding their old identity, the Unbroken Domain of Mankind was born, and, with the eventual discovery of interstellar travel, a vast horizon awaited. So what's the plan here? Well, at first I figured that it would be easy to make the UDM an iron-fisted, horrible, typical sci-fi evil empire to reinforce how scary they are, but instead I wanted their destiny to be a bit more flexible. They very well could become the same kind of warmongers they were created to fight, a tyrannical regime, or even if it goes that way, a faction of liberators in the galaxy's very spooky saviors. For this playthrough, the Unbroken Domain of Mankind will start with their government structured as a war council, harkening back to their militaristic origins. They'll start the game being led by High Counselor Ephraim Hansen, grandson of the Firstborn. They'll start the game with the following traits, ethics, and civics. To those familiar with Stellaris, I will say right out the gate that this will be done on the console version of the game, and as such I unfortunately couldn't utilize the Biogenesis DLC, which would make this spacefaring take on humanity all the more body horror. But with limitation comes creativity, I felt, and thus the concept was created using the tools that I had at my disposal. The plan is to run this playthrough on a series of streams over on my Twitch, seeing the story unfold as the game advances. I've created about 10 interstellar civilizations with random ethics and ideals, with the remaining empires being procedurally generated by the game for the sake of variety and discovery. Once all those streams have wrapped up, I may do a sort of lore recap of the events that unfolded. The stream dates will be posted on my YouTube channel's community tab, so be sure to check there if you don't want to miss any updates. Until then, I also want to reiterate that while I work on this, I am still going to be making other videos as normal, and this is, more than anything, just a fun, creative exercise and side quest. But if you don't want to miss out on any of this or any of my future projects, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff.